All right, thanks everybody for coming to the CSA AI Summit. I'm here with a pretty special guest of mine. Uh, Tomas Maldonado, CISO for the NFL. Tomas, I'm going to tell you a little bit about CSA just to catch you up on things. I know you're familiar, but we've been building best practices for security and cloud and emerging technologies for 15 years now. We're called the Cloud Security Alliance, so you can imagine that we started in the cloud game back then, but everything's evolved so much. So not just from a cloud perspective, but how we're utilizing some of these services. And as the theme of the summit is, AI has just been integrated across a lot of cloud services. It's a part of how we interact with, staff, with people, with customers, with brands, with partners and everything like that. And so that was the topic for the day, right? The topic for the summit, but also for you and I to talk just, hey, the NFL, it's more than just a brand. It's more than just a sports franchise model. You guys encompass a lot, anywhere from the teams to the players, the millions, maybe billions of fans that we have there. You name it, broadcasting partners. We've talked a little bit about this. Maybe you can just tell me a little bit why security is so important for the NFL and how you have to protect all these different components of the NFL.
Yeah, look, so first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's great to be a part of this. Obviously, I've heard of the Cloud Security Alliance for many years. So it's just great to be a part of this and to share my thoughts. Security, I'll say cybersecurity, NFL aside, cybersecurity is a big and important topic for multiple companies. AI obviously is probably one of the things that is on the forefront of a lot of companies' minds these days. But when we think about security, the level, actually not the level, but how interconnected people are with technology, right? So what I mean by that is people cannot leave their house. I can almost count on two hands, the amount of people that can leave a house without having their phone, and the ones that would, if they didn't have their phone, that would turn back just to get their phone before they actually go on about their day, right? So that speaks volumes, right? Because a phone, think about the phone from back in the days, it was a wired device connected in your house. You weren't sort of necessarily thinking, hey, I can't leave my house without my phone. But nowadays, you can't leave your house without your technology, and that technology being a phone or a device. So when you think about that piece of technology and how connected it is with people, then you think about every individual's experience, whether they're banking, whether they're shopping, whether they're doing retail, picking up pharmacy, medical stuff, whether they're going to the hospital, doctor, whether they're interacting in a sporting event, right? To be able to get into a sporting venue, you want to have like a mobile ticket on your device to present to get into the venue. That level of interconnectedness that we all have with technology makes it paramount for every single company to be focused on security, on cybersecurity specifically, but on security in general, because that convergence between cyber physical is very, very apparent, and it's near and dear to my heart from what I do at the NFL. But you're starting to see a lot of those convergences happen. Whether it's looking at how wars are being executed, to how criminals are trying to take advantage, or adversaries trying to take advantage of weaknesses in technology systems and the like. So I think it's one of those areas where if you're not focused on cybersecurity, if you're not focused on things like cloud security, if you're not looking at AI and how that's able to positively and negatively disrupt your company, I think you're missing a key part of how to connect with your customers, right? And for us, it's very critical in what we do.
Yeah, oh, man, I love that. And the whole cyber physical convergence that you mentioned, it makes sense to me too. I think every day in our lives, we're interacting with not just people, but devices. And when I think of coming to a game, not only is there a physical stadium and physical seats that I'm sitting in, but the tickets are digital. Probably the way I purchased my jersey is digital. And the way we interact with your fan base, with whether it's your favorite football team or the NFL itself, There's a huge digital component to it. And I know even these days there's a huge, AI component to it where if you can't watch a game without seeing some sort of AI stats up there. And so I know the NFL is utilizing AI a lot in just generating, fan content for fans. And I was curious too, how are you generating some of that even for security, for securing stadiums and the fan base and things like that too?
Yeah, look, we use AI in a lot of the technologies that we leverage to secure our networks and secure the sort of fan experience. If I just encapsulate it all in that sort of bucket or category, right? You have the fan facing side, which is all of the sort of next gen stats and things like that. And I'm not sort of trying to be a public service announcement for one of our sponsors, but you've got a lot of data that's being generated or created, right, from the game, and then you have a lot of statistical information that can be leveraged, and you have all of that data, those data elements feeding those fan facing applications, which is really awesome and great to interact with. And you have the security side, which means if there's so much data that's being generated from a fan facing side, a consumer facing side, imagine all the data that's being generated from threats and alerts and different specific countries or states or cities, or just curious people online trying to do you know bad things, right? I mean,
Wanting to disrupt a game or something like too, right?
yeah, potentially trying to disrupt the game, right? Disrupt our business, right?
Yeah.
So we leverage a lot of AI to be able to cut through a lot of the noise, right? Because there's tons of noise in terms of data elements or telemetry that's coming out of these alert systems, whether they're email alerts, firewall alerts, just general alerts in an operating technology environment for
Mm.
an actual stadium. We have to leverage AI to help us cut through the noise and really start to not only be repeatable, I don't want to say repeatable process, but to automate and get more efficiency around our processes and procedures, but also to help us really identify that needle in the haystack, which is what we're looking for, right? What is that one particular item or one particular anomalous activity that we need to really be focusing on and hone in on to mitigate that particular risk so that it doesn't have a detrimental impact to our game.
Yeah. Uh, I know there's a lot of money at stake too when we think about these things, just financial value, not just the NFL brand. And if people don't know, seven of the top 10 most valuable franchises in the world are all in the NFL. But what about, fantasy football is such a big deal. We know people pay millions of dollars for, sponsors pay millions of dollars for commercials. Even sports betting is a pretty big deal nowadays too. Does that fall within kind of your scope at all too, for making sure that you're securing some of those interactions with broadcast partners and other entertainment partners too?
Yeah, so we look, sports betting is a huge component of the sporting environment, if you will, sporting ecosystem. There's a lot of money in that capacity or in that business, if you will, not only for our league but other leagues as well. And I think the way we approach sports betting and the aspects of the integrity of the game is very critical and key for us. So there's clear rules and regulations around what staff can do and what they can't
Mm.
do in regards to sort of betting, whether it's so we can't bet on sports. Let's just flat out say that. And the reason for that is because the integrity of the game is so critical and key, right? If you have leagues that allow their player or their staff to bet on, and even players to bet on the games, then you have specific outcomes that could be biased or tainted, right? And so the integrity of our game and look, some of it is not unique to us, right? The integrity of all the other leagues as well is very key and critical. So sports betting in the construct of, do we start to identify individuals that might be potentially trying to place bets? Does that fall under the remit of security? It absolutely does. Obviously, we have business touch points with brokers and the likes, and I almost equate it to my days of financial services, where you had to clear your trades, right, via some sort of compliance process, and you had the big banks connected with the brokers and being able to see where individuals were trying to make a trade where they didn't clear it, and then you'd have to sort of go back and have your procedures around employment behavior change. We have the same stuff. We have the same level of processes and procedures on on the entertainment industry, and working and collaborating with those brokers is very key and critical for us to be able to, again, protect the integrity of the game, which is of the utmost of importance. And not only for us at the league, but obviously for our fans, right? Our games are, you don't want, the whole point of placing a bet is because of the chance that you're able to win. Obviously, there's individuals that want to get an upper hand. And so there's data that we do have that's very critical. Oh, sorry, not critical. That's very important. Imagine if you could get access to finding out what are your favorite players going to be hurt or not and play or not in the game, or how he will be able to perform in the game. So there's adversaries that are really honed in and trying to get that access to that information. So those are things that we worry about and we put in safeguards for. But then we also try to just make sure that the actual game itself is not seen as having some level of corruptness. So the integrity of the game is very important.
Right. Yeah, I don't think people always see those different aspects of a sports game too, what goes involved, what's all involved, especially from a cyber physical perspective, what do you have to protect? And I don't even think you've really touched into what about stadiums too, right? They have to be pretty well protected, not just from the fans, but aren't most of these stadiums operated, digitally and virtually with either rooftops, sprinkler systems, things like that. Even the lights those could potentially interrupt gameplay or even a big, a big play and impact and outcome of a game. So I'm sure that plays a
Absolutely.
role too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the operating technology in the stadium, right? So the OT and the IoT
Hmm.
infrastructure that's in there, as well as the general IT infrastructure that's in there, is critical and important that we focus in on. And I'll say that if you've been following CISA and what Jen Easterly and the CISA team are
Yeah.
doing with respect to identifying the categories of critical infrastructure, the stadiums and the leagues are considered part of critical infrastructure. And so there's specific control requirements that the stadiums do have to abide by and
Yeah.
do have to put in place to protect the systems themselves, because it could pose as not only a disruption for you as a fan being able to see a video board, but they could pose a health and safety risk, right?
Oh, wow.
Imagine you're going up an escalator or even in an elevator, and the elevator system gets compromised or the escalator system is compromised, and now you've got that thing that just stops abruptly. You could have some health and safety issues there, right? People falling, if the escalators is going down and you're on that path and it stops abruptly, you could fall forward and potentially have some hurt limbs or the like. So those are things we hone in on the stadium and really work with our stadium operators to ensure that they are implementing these cybersecurity best practices, again, that are national standards pushed out by the Department of Homeland Security, really tied to that NIST cybersecurity framework, with the intention of ensuring that we can protect the health and safety of our fans as they go in and out of the arenas or the stadiums.
Yeah, that's interesting how you guys have had to do that too. Maybe I can even ask this question too. So, how have you had to do this within the NFL? Technology changes so quickly, and hey, we started out with cloud. We helped a lot of people come up with cloud strategies, implementation and adoption practices. How did cloud impact the NFL over the past years? Did you guys have to make some pretty big adjustments for that availability and use of that infrastructure?
Look, I think cloud has been a big benefit
Yeah.
for our specific company. I think we've been able to see the advantages of leveraging cloud for greater resiliency, in some instances, greater control over aspects of what would be in a data center. Right, you have a little bit greater control and frequency of things like patching of assets for those, for areas where we're just leveraging sort of SaaS-based solutions that are in cloud. I think our approach has been to really hone in on the opportunities for leveraging cloud to, again, a huge focus on providing a good product for our fans, right? So
Right.
being able to connect with our fans and that fan experience, but also, just general best practices around how we should be operating and building efficiencies around our technology infrastructure. So leveraging cloud has been very key for us, not only for processing of very public things that you've probably seen already, which is like processing the schedule, where
Yeah.
we sort of do a lot of cloud computing around the schedule and the different permutations there, leveraging AI, but also just general best practices around different applications that we're able to be more nimble and more agile with, to support our workforce as they roam around the U.S. and even internationally, now that we're playing a lot more international games.
Yeah, that's awesome. Pretty cool stuff. And it kind of leads us into the whole Gen AI conversation as we're evaluating cloud a lot more, continue to evaluate that closely. We see this evolution where, we started building out massive cloud native features. We were using containers and even serverless environments to just build, better applications and leverage cloud further. I think that's where Gen AI is playing a huge role too. Now it's just being incorporated into this whole co-pilotization type of thing that we're seeing with cloud, right? And I think I've heard you talk some about this in the past too, but as far as Gen AI, do you see it both as, maybe you can share how it poses both a threat to your organization, but also how you're able to utilize that to protect against some of these adversaries?
Yeah, look, I think Gen AI is an interesting topic, right? As you start to leverage it for efficiency around just general data processing and doing your day-to-day. I think there's a huge upside to leveraging Gen AI in the day-to-day practices. And I've said this in a few occasions, or in a few forums. If you think about how you used to write emails, and you used to go about writing your email, and you'd have to you didn't have any sort of spell check or grammar check in your emails, and you would sort of copy that content, put it into like a different application, and do your sort of spell check and grammar check, and then you'd sort of copy it back, and then you'd hit send on the email. Well, now all of that stuff is built into your emails, right? Where you could do your grammar check and your spell check, and now there's even this sort of construct of finishing your sentence, right? So for people who don't like having a conversation and other people finishing their sentences, well, that's happening naturally in your day-to-day applications of creating content on an email platform or a Word document, right? Where I'm going with this is, I think at some point in time, you're going to see Gen AI baked into solutions like that we use every single day and almost don't even think about it anymore. And I think that's a real big advantage, and companies that are sort of that are sort of leaning into that model of how this can increase the productivity of my staff and my workforce. I think there's big pluses there. The downside, or not the downside, but the opportunities where we need to stay focused in on as security professionals is, I think Gen AI will start to exacerbate problems that you didn't know you had. And I'll give you an example, right? If you think about shared drives, and not to get too technical here, but if you think about shared drives and access management and entitlements, right? Think about the old days of having to work through permissions on a file share and a folder, and the different sort of documents in a folder structure. All of that stuff could be managed at a group level, at a folder level, or at a document level. And you could have some gaps in that sort of paradigm where you may have permissions that restrict access at a folder level, but yet a document was opened up for everyone to have access to it, and now you can see that document, right?
Sure.
In those days, you had to know the path to the actual document to be able to find it and click through and say, oh, wow, I have access to this document I probably shouldn't have. Gen AI world, you start to use your data as the data set. You start to ask questions, and now what will unintentionally happen, or could unintentionally happen, is that sort of gap in entitlements and access management will start to, in my opinion, start to be sort of spotlighted more, where someone can ask a general question in regular plain English, show me all the documents that have, XYZ sensitive data. And now you've pulled down a whole set of documents that you have access to, and the ones that you probably didn't even know you had access to. And I think that's a challenge for us as security professionals. How do we work through that data governance? How do we work through that sort of data labeling? And then how do we ensure the entitlements of, for access management are carried forward throughout the life cycle of individuals accessing data by way of leveraging these Gen AI tools? I think that's a challenge that security professionals probably haven't thought about, or maybe if they have, they're starting to tackle those challenges today. And I think, not to give adversaries sort of ammunition and a blueprint as to what to do or what not to do, but I think security professionals need to really hone in on administrative privileges. Like
Yeah.
as users who have admin privileges, should they have the ability to log in with their admin account, if you will, and use Gen AI?
Hmm.
Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe you should restrict that to a general purpose user account. And if you're an admin user, you don't have the administrative user account have the ability to launch or ask queries with leveraging Gen AI, whether it's a chat bot or whatever it is that you're going to use for your Gen AI and your models. So those are things that I would sort of pose as opportunities for us as security professionals to think about. How do we continue to move the bar? How do we continue to add those safeguards in as we leverage Gen AI? And then how do we make it much more difficult for adversaries? Because the attack on identity is not going away. That's just not going away until we get to a complete sort of passwordless model, if you will. And then in that construct of, even if you do have passwordless, you still have to worry about entitlements and the overprivileging of access. And so I think, there's a lot of talk around sort of the constructs of zero trust and what zero trust networking means. But I think we really need to start to apply all of those things together and really almost get down to fundamentals, which is, patching, access management, and ensuring that you have the right entitlement structure to protect data and data security controls. So
Yeah, I love that
a lot of
idea.
positives, but some challenges or opportunities, I'll call them.
Yeah, it's a cool use case too, that whole discovery of accounts either being used or not used. Even identifying patterns, like, hey, now we can, if I have patterns of how my developers are using a certain system, I can create identities, like identity policies and access policies that way too. So yeah, great example of something like that for sure.
I've got a bunch more, but I won't share them because I don't want to give adversaries ammunition. So if you have any other questions, not you, but if the public has any other question, I'm happy to
Yeah.
chat offline. But there's tons of different use cases, and I would just look. I would I would suggest that our security professionals just think like your adversary, and how can they get access to data easily, and then think about how Gen AI will be able to sort of exacerbate those weaknesses, if you will.
I know you and I are both a part of the startup community a little bit too, and I know I see a ton of innovation there. Just, ideas that, it's not the main focus for some of the major CSPs. So some of these really innovative companies are taking the lead and leading the charge with generative AI. I think it's really helping advance these new solutions a lot faster too than we've ever seen. So I think that's pretty cool stuff, man.
No, I absolutely agree. I think there's these sort of cycles, right, of different areas and opportunities for disruption. And I think Gen AI is definitely going to start, it's already developing new startup ideas.
Yeah.
Obviously, the startups that have already been looking at artificial intelligence and Gen AI, prior to becoming the latest buzzword over the past, I don't even call it a buzzword, because this is probably one of the buzzwords that actually has a real sort of application that you can leverage, but it's become very mainstream over the past year or so, if you will. But the companies that have been looking at this space for a while, which there are plenty, I think they're at the right point at the right time to capitalize and provide good value to companies like ours and others that
Oh, yeah.
are trying to innovate.
Yeah. So for your teams, how do you help your teams understand some of these technologies? Because, before you roll something out, you have to have a good understanding of what that technology is, whether it's Gen AI. You mentioned some of the zero trust
Mhm.
principles and, deploying those to protect your assets too. How do you help your teams understand those technologies and become experts?
Yeah, look, I've always been of the motto of the idea, and I've always had the motto of, you have to have some sort of R&D budget, right? And that R&D budget, so that research and development budget, should not only include like technology sort of research and development, but also education, right? So making sure that you have the right level of research tools available at your disposal, so that you can tap into conversations with experts, or quote unquote experts. The other way I try to ensure that my team stays abreast of what's going on is, by way of not industry events is one of the easier of them all, but also having one-to-one conversations with vendors. So we have really good relationship with our vendors that are providing services to us, or even our sponsors, our partners, sorry, that we are engaged with. And we try to ensure that we have those experts at the table to talk to us about what are those new developments. So fundamentals of business relationship management, right? Making sure you have QBRs with your vendors, so that you can know what they're sort of developing and creating, and then ask pointed questions, and then try to get an outside view or an independent view by way of these independent research organizations.
Yeah. Hey, we're one of them, Tomas. I hope to see you.
Absolutely. You guys are absolutely one of them. I
Yeah.
mean, there's tons of tools and service offerings that you provide. So, if you're not taking advantage of CSA, there's tons of free research that you guys put out in addition to one's part of the membership. Then I don't know what you're doing with yourself. So definitely click in.
I appreciate that little plug there too. We have a lot of fun just exploring these technologies, and it's really community driven. So it's one of those things where we talk to Tomas, like leaders like you, how do we need to address specific threats? What do we do with Gen I from how do we incorporate better, but also how do we protect against it? So there's lots of different aspects like that. Man,
Some
I've
of
had a
the
lot of
things,
fun.
just to say one other thought here,
Yeah,
John, is
yeah,
like sometimes we overthink it, right? We overthink just because it has a new shiny name that it's something drastically new, but we forget that we're humans and humans are not that creative. We sort of create new things, but those new things have some sort of trail back to things that you've already seen and already have witnessed, right? So don't
mm,
forget the fundamentals and apply those fundamentals, and not only fundamentals of how you're thinking about solving problems, and going back to those generic questions of who, what, when, how, and why, right? From an adversarial sort of thought process, and apply that forward to anything new that you're seeing. Because just because it's new doesn't mean that it actually is very, very new. It could be an innovative or a new iteration of something that you've seen before. You just need
right.
to make the connection in your head for that to make sense.
Yeah, and I would say that yeah, generative AI fits that bill almost perfectly. We're just saying the empowerment of these frontier models and even the hyperscaler, just bring it to not only our fingertips, but man, the compute power, the capabilities of these large language models are just they're expanding so quickly. It's pretty impressive.
No, it's exciting. We're living in exciting times right
Oh,
now.
right.
Um, but I would really encourage us not to get lazy. And I don't mean that in a sort of derogatory way. I just mean let's keep educating ourselves on the space. Don't solely rely upon, using these models to ask questions and use that as a main source of your learning and education, but use that as a way to challenge your thoughts and your processes, and keep continue to grow by way of independent research.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember, Steve Grossman's your colleague, your colleague over at the NBA. He said
He's got
something.
a cool job, man. I don't know about my job. His job is way cooler.
You think?
I mean, he saw Jordan play. I
Ah,
mean, I
fair
did see
enough.
Tom Brady play, but hey,
Yeah.
depends who you think the GOAT is, I guess.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I've never posed that question. It's always Jordan versus who, but Tom Brady versus who, but never together. That's an interesting point. Who's the GOAT there? Uh,
I don't know.
One of my favorite things he said, and he was with you when he said this. He said, "Hey, it's important that we meet, the fans and uh, and our staff and our teams at the technology that they're utilizing."
Right.
And I thought it fit so perfect with how we should really approach technology today. It's not about whether or not we think this technology is going to work or not. It's whether or not our customers are using it and the industry is using it. And I think it's very clear that generative AI is being utilized across so many sectors. Uh, NFL, I'm guessing you're approaching like that too, right? Meeting your customers, meeting your fan base at the technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to meet our fans where they are, right? Not every fan is going to be connected at a computer. Not every fan is going to be on a mobile device. Not every fan is going to be in front of a TV, a
Yeah.
TV where they can see a broadcast. So we need to meet our fans where they are. And when we think about the technological interactions with them, we want to leverage the latest and greatest innovation so that we could explore those opportunities and explore those connections and touch points with them, right? We're in the business of emotions, right? Which we're tapping into people's emotions, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, the product, right? People are very emotionally charged with watching a game because they don't know the outcome. So the integrity of the game is great, right? Because they're able to have an affinity with the club that they're a fan of, right? Because the clubs are doing such a great job reaching out to their customer base and their fan base, right? And because you are as a fan um, so connected with sports, right? And sport and the entertainment side of sports, because everyone aspires to be like the people that they see on TV, right? These sort of high level athletes that are at the top of their game. And so meeting those fans where they are from a technology standpoint, as well as from a messaging and a connection standpoint, is critical. It's critical for us. It's critical for the NBA and the other leagues. It's critical for all companies that are in the business of customer service. If you're waiting for your customers to come to you, I think you're probably going to be challenged. If you're trying to reach your customers where they are in their day to day, I think you're going to be very, very successful. I saw that when I worked in banking. I see that now in this industry that I'm in now, sports and entertainment. I saw it in chemical manufacturing. We were pretty successful there as well. So successful companies are geared at being more sort of customer oriented and customer driven, and connecting with their fans or their customers
Mm.
where they are today in their day to day.
Yeah, I mean, you just opened up a whole nother can of worms. We're talking about like social media, and I
Yeah.
know, the players, the owners of the NFL teams. I mean, these are celebrities too, with these, with profiles with accounts that need to be protected. So, yeah, it goes far beyond just the game itself, the big events. I mean, what you have to do, Tomas, stretches all the way down to the players and the fans. So it's pretty incredible what you guys are doing over there. Great
No,
job.
thanks. Look, it's a big role. It's a very fun and interesting and challenging role. I enjoy every year, because every year is different. Especially when we think about big events like a Super Bowl, we get to
Oh yeah.
connect with a different state, a different city, different counties. You know, meet sort of local small to medium sized businesses to large businesses and everyone in between, both in the public sector and in the private sector, and we get to connect with those individuals to put on a show that everybody watches all around the world, and make sure that those fans go in and leave the venue, and feel that they were safe. That to me is a great sort of honor and privilege that I get to do that, with obviously with the help of an enormous amount of staff that I have on site, working with me, but also those partners that work with us at that sort of local level, in that city, county, and state level. So kudos to all of those involved with helping us put on that show. But it's a great role that I have. It's not sort of lost upon me the impact that we have on the economy, the impact that we have on society, and the impact that we have on our nation as a whole, and the responsibility that we have to protect that game that you're, as a fan, willing and wanted to see every day that it's on TV.
Yeah, boy, it's amazing the emotional impact it has if a city's team doesn't win that week.
Yes. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I remember trying to leave Super Bowls, and one of the teams didn't win, and it was a little tough to get out of town because of
Oh
'cause of
boy.
the charged up fans. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, Tomas, I think you're just such a good example of the digital ecosystem there too, just because, sometimes you can't see like the ecosystem, but there are just so many fans of the NFL. You can see how everything's related from your fan interaction to the stadiums, ticket sales, merchandise, the team, broadcasting. Yeah, there's just so many ways. There's so many digital touch points that you have to pay attention to in your role. And I think we can all learn from that. Even if we're not as complex as the NFL is, we have a lot of digital boundaries too that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of digital boundaries, tons of digital touch points, a lot of data being created and generated. So we've got, we could probably talk about this for hours, John. Think about the different states and the different privacy laws and how that touches. There's so much to unpack. But it's exciting, and what I would want people to know is that we have a good set of people within our organization really honed in and focused in on protecting all of that data and all those touch points.
Yeah, and generative AI is going to play a huge role with partners, and sounds like within the NFL too. So it's
Absolutely.
pretty great
Absolutely.
stuff.
I can't wait. Look, I can't wait for Gen AI to start responding to emails for me. But joking aside, we are looking at Gen AI as opportunities for us to improve our security operations, to help us do better and find anomalous activity on our environments, and help bring in new talent, right? Bring in that pipeline of new talent into the field and speed up their sort of on-the-job training, right? And close that sort of resource hiring gap. So I think Gen AI has tons of upside if you leverage it the right way.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And we're going to showcase something next month on the top uses of Gen AI and cybersecurity. Thomas, I'll definitely share that with you, and hopefully, not only will you understand what the top uses are, but also just say, what are the implementation challenges? What are the considerations when we're using this for rule creation, for threat and vulnerability management, things like that. So should be pretty neat.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll be happy to share it with you, maybe even like on February 11th, you know, down in is it New Orleans this year?
No, no, it's Vegas. If you want, come
Vegas.
down, come down. You can come down. Just knock on the door. Tell them that Tomas sent you. And
See how that works, huh?
joking. I'm joking.
See how that
Uh,
works.
yeah, you could try to share something with me on February 11th, but I think I might be busy. I might
Yeah.
be a little bit busy that day.
Yeah, I think you told me to. Yeah, you're probably the last person to want to watch the game with on February 11th because you don't watch the game.
Yeah, look,
You're
if
watching
I
everything
can,
else.
my goal this year is to try to see 5.5 minutes of the game. If I can see five, I think last year I saw a total of 5 minutes.
All
So
right.
every year I can see a little bit more. So if I can see 5.5 minutes of the game, I think that's a win. And it's not because we're sort of under attack and dealing with things like that. I mean, we are dealing with threats and the likes, but it's because we're so laser focused. We're so
Yeah.
laser focused on making sure that the game happens and our fans are happy and nothing is transpiring that we need to be worried about. So, my focus is I'll watch the game after the game is has ended, and may the best team win. And once that hits 0-0, then our job has been done for the year, and it's on to plan for the next Super Bowl.
Hey, man, it's good to know you're looking out for the game so that we can all enjoy it. So,
Absolutely.
Tomas, it's much appreciated, my friend.
Thank you. Great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. I think I want to thank Thomas and everybody for joining around the world. It's been a great last couple of days for this AI summit, and we're going to do a lot more of these, understanding how we're using them, how we're using them to protect against ourselves, how we're using to protect against generative AI capabilities, and learn how to just to build, run, and offer better Gen AI services. So, all right, thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate it.